If you think the tech billionaires of today, with their private space races and world-shaping fortunes, are the richest people who ever lived, you're not even close. About 7 centuries ago, a West African king commanded a fortune so staggering that modern estimates struggle to pin it down, but they often land somewhere between $300 and $500 billion. He was so rich that on a single trip, he gave away enough gold to crash the economy of an entire region for years to come. And this isn't some myth or a fairy tale. This is the real story of a man who controlled some of the world's most precious resources, built a city of scholars in the middle of the desert, and literally put his empire on the map. So, who was Mansa Musa, and how in the world did he become the richest man in history? To really get Mansa Musa's story, you need to picture the world in the early 1300s, while Europe was struggling with plagues, famines, and constant war. The West African Empire of Mali was stepping into its golden age. To most of the outside world, it was a mysterious land, a place somewhere on the edge of the known map. The story of this empire and its greatest king isn't just about money. It's about how that fortune was built on 2 simple but essential resources: gold and salt. The Mali Empire was founded by the legendary Sundiata Keita, Mansa Musa's great uncle, who built the foundation for a powerful, organized state. But it was under Musa that Mali would hit the absolute peak of its power and fame. He took the throne in 1312, and how he got it is a story in itself. His predecessor, Mansa Abubakari II, wasn't beaten in a battle or overthrown. He was an explorer, obsessed with finding out what was on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. He put together a huge fleet of ships and sailed west, right into the unknown, leaving his deputy, Musa, in charge. Abubakari never came back. And just like that, Musa became Mansa, the king of kings. He was handed the keys to an already prosperous kingdom. But what he did next would make him a legend. So, how do you build a fortune that makes today's billionaires look like they're on a budget? Well, it came down to 2 things: geography and total control. The Mali Empire sat on an unbelievable amount of natural resources, and Mansa Musa was smart enough to use them to his advantage on a global scale. First, the gold. The empire controlled the legendary gold mines of Bambouk, Bure, and Galam. It's estimated that at the time, West Africa was producing more than half of the world's entire gold supply. And this wasn't just any gold. It was famous for being the purest on the planet. Mansa, or Emperor, Musa, had the rights to every single gold nugget found in his lands. People could have the gold dust, but any solid nugget belonged to the throne. But gold was only half the story. The other, equally precious resource was salt. In a medieval world without refrigeration, salt wasn't just for flavor, it was life. It was a critical resource for preserving food. While Musa's lands to the south were filled with gold, the Sahara Desert to the north held massive salt mines. This set up one of the most profitable trades in history. Caravans would haul massive slabs of salt from the desert and trade them in Mali's markets, sometimes for their literal weight in gold. Mansa Musa took complete control over these trans-Saharan trade routes. His empire was the gatekeeper for all trade flowing between West Africa, North Africa, the Middle East, and even parts of Europe. He taxed everything that came through, not just gold and salt, but also ivory, copper, silks, and spices. This sent a constant stream of wealth pouring directly into his treasury, building a fortune that was almost impossible to imagine. For 12 years, Mansa Musa grew his power and his fortune. But in 1324, he set off on a journey that would show the entire world just how wealthy he truly was. As a devout Muslim, he undertook the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca. This wasn't just any pilgrimage, though. It was a procession of faith, power, and wealth on a scale nobody had ever seen before. His caravan was basically a moving city. The accounts from the time sound like something out of an epic. They speak of 60,000 people marching across the Sahara. This massive group included soldiers, officials, merchants, storytellers, and 12,000 of Musa's own personal attendants, all dressed in fine silks. And then there was the gold. Following them was a train of up to 100 camels, each one reportedly carrying hundreds of pounds of pure gold dust. Legend even has it that he commissioned a new mosque to be built every Friday in every town his caravan stopped in. The real spectacle, however, happened when this river of gold poured into Cairo in July of 1324. At the time, Cairo was a major global hub. Mansa Musa stayed for 3 months and, in an incredible act of generosity, he handed out gold to seemingly everyone he met. He gave gifts to the poor, traded gold for souvenirs, and handed out fortunes to local officials. He pumped so much gold into the city that he completely wrecked the market. This sudden flood of gold caused its value to crash, sparking massive inflation that damaged the economy of Egypt and the region for years. Some accounts say the market didn't fully recover for over a decade. The Arab historian Shihab Umari, who visited Cairo years later, wrote that people were still talking about the king whose generosity had drowned their city in gold. The story goes that on his way home, Musa realized the economic chaos he'd caused and tried to fix it. In a move that was centuries ahead of its time, he reportedly tried to borrow back all the gold he could from lenders in Cairo at a high interest rate. It was one of the first known attempts at large-scale economic intervention, but it also showed that he now held the power to single-handedly control the price of gold in the Mediterranean. The pilgrimage was a global sensation. For the first time, European and Arab powers, who'd only heard rumors of a golden kingdom in the south, had proof. His fame was cemented in 1375 on the Catalan Atlas, one of the most important world maps of the Middle Ages. Right in the middle of West Africa, it depicts a king on a throne wearing a gold crown and holding a giant gold nugget. That king was Mansa Musa. But his legacy became so much more than just his money. He returned from Mecca with a new vision. He brought back scholars, architects, and poets from across the Islamic world, including the famous architect Abu Ishaq al-Sahili. His new goal was to make Mali a world-class center for culture and learning. The heart of this new project was the city of Timbuktu. Musa annexed the city and poured his unbelievable resources into it. He commissioned grand new buildings, like his own palace and the legendary Jingerbur Mosque, a masterpiece of Sahelian design that still stands today. Timbuktu was transformed. It became home to the University of Sankar, a prestigious center of learning where scholars from all over the world came to study. Libraries were built, and the city turned into a bustling hub where merchants from as far as Venice and Granada came to trade for gold. Mansa Musa didn't just spend his gold. He invested it in culture, faith, and education, kicking off a golden age in West Africa whose intellectual legacy lasted long after the gold was gone. If you believe history is packed with incredible stories that need to be told, help us bring more of them to light. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a journey into the past. And let us know in the comments who's another historical figure whose true story sounds larger than life. So, was Mansa Musa the richest person in history? Modern estimates place his inflation-adjusted wealth around $400 billion. Though some figures range from $300 billion to as high as $500 billion. While it's tricky to make perfect comparisons across centuries, his fortune stands apart. The wealth of figures like Augustus Caesar or John D. Rockefeller was often tied up in state economies or corporate shares. Mansa Musa's wealth was different. It was personal, tangible, and absolute, literal mountain of gold backed by a monopoly on vital global resources. His reign flips the script on what many of us are taught about world history. He was a king who could control the price of gold with a single decision. Build a great university in the desert, and whose generosity could both create cities and break economies. The Mali Empire eventually faded, but the story of its greatest king lives on. It's a story of a fortune so huge it's hard to truly grasp, and a legacy that proves that history holds figures far more spectacular than any fiction. And when we ask who the wealthiest person to ever live was, by almost any measure, all signs still point to the Golden King of Mali.